When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away those childish things. For now, we see in a mirror, darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know just as I also am known. My name is Aaron William Clarke. It is my name and only my name, which ties me to a past dominated by fear, anger, and uncertainty. It is the vestige of a broken home, a broken childhood. But the time comes for everyone to put away childish things. And I have learned with the unwavering support of this community to embrace the strength of my name. My name is Aaron William Clarke. I am running to unseat the 32-year incumbent of Rogers City Council, Ward 1, Position 2. And with your continued support, I am going to win. Having been named the Ward of the State at age 11, with 7 subsequent years of penance paid to the Boys Correctional Facility, where I completed my education in life, I found myself homeless at 18. To say that I failed to imagine the man I would become, or that life was difficult, would be a severe understatement. I found myself a participant in gang activity, unable to envision a life that did not end at the muzzle of a gun. The only family I recognized were the men standing at my shoulder. So like the experiences described by our armed servicemen in combat, we felt hunger together. We knew want together. We studied disenfranchisement and disparity and the art of the get back together. We were angry and undereducated. I was diagnosed with ADHD but had no understanding of my diagnosis beyond the hardships it presented me in school. I lost people. I felt betrayal. I grew dark-hearted. Negativity exhausted my spirit. My name is Aaron William Clarke. I have starved in the streets. I have experienced discrimination. I have lost and regained my rights. I have worked the system. I have made mistakes and I have paid for them. I am a father. I am an activist. I am a person of color. I am a community leader. I am your candidate. I have stood and will continue to stand against the hate groups based in this region. I have stood and will continue to stand for community involvement in matters of public safety and social justice. I have stood and will continue to stand for the well-being and greater overall success of the people of Rogers. I have bridged the gap, spanned the gulf, and come to understand the officials who I once considered my enemies. I am running for office to ensure that the people of Rogers, all the people of Rogers, are heard, understood, and uplifted. My work in co-founding Bridge the Gap NWA to meet our law enforcement leaders where they are, to support our communities of color and their various triumphs and struggles, to bring our message of unity to those who would be associated with the Ku Klux Klan, and to do so peacefully with respect afforded to all parties, speaks for itself. In my youth, I never imagined that I would one day run for office. Never did I envision standing with the Latin and Pacific Islander people of NWA in solidarity for their rights to public health resources, equal pay, and criminal justice reform during an unprecedented global crisis. But I have become a man, and I have put away those childish things. I have put away the childish thinking that I would amount to nothing, and you must also. The world is changing. This country must change, and it begins with local representation of real people by real people. My name is Aaron William Clarke, City Council candidate for Rogers, Ward 1, Position 2. And together, we are bridging the gap.
Hey, how are y'all doing tonight? My name is Dan Whitfield. I'm a progressive independent here in Arkansas. And today I am interviewing Mr. Aaron Clarke. He is a progressive candidate for the Rogers, Arkansas City Council. How are you doing, Aaron?
I'm doing all right. How you doing tonight, Dan?
Pretty good, man. Just finished up work, got my school done, and ready to give you some time.
All right, all right. I appreciate you for giving me a chance to speak to your platform about exactly what I'd like to do and the changes and differences I'd like to see in Rogers.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've met you a couple times at a few different rallies and protests, and you're an inspiration to so many people in your community and so many communities around you. I'm really glad that you gave me the opportunity to come on tonight and talk about a few questions that I had surrounding your platform.
All right, I'm ready to go. Any questions that you have, ask away. I'm more than welcome. I'm more than ready to answer.
For sure. So, my first question I always ask is, do you support Medicare for all?
Yes, I think that health insurance, free health insurance for everybody is something that America should definitely have. There's too many families out there who suffer, and there's too many families out there who can't afford medical or health insurance. And there's jobs out there that kind of dance around the lines of having to offer medical insurance or not having to offer medical insurance. So things like that aren't readily available to a lot of these low income families out there. So you have people out there who are going to the ER and getting big bills all for the simple fact that they can't afford healthcare like everybody else. So I think that healthcare is free healthcare is huge, and I think that every American citizen has the right to be able to have affordable and free healthcare and be able to just be comfortable knowing that they can have their bodies taken care of without having to pay thousands and thousands of dollars.
Oh, I completely agree. And actually, even to go a little bit further than that, even if you do have health insurance, the way that our current system is now, you're still paying thousands and thousands of dollars out of pocket.
Exactly.
Even if you're doing everything right, you have a decent job, they offer medical benefits, and you're paying your whatever, 500, 6, 7, 8, 9, 100, $1,000 a month. But then you actually get sick and you go to the emergency room, and boom, you just got hit with $1,000 bill, even though you have all your insurance, you're doing it all right. So
Exactly, and then you also have to add in the fact that there's some doctors out there who don't do everything that they could possibly do due to the fact that people don't have insurance. So you're talking about tests that could be ran on somebody who's showing symptoms of cancer who is showing symptoms of terminal illnesses, but they're not getting the proper care and the proper treatment that they need to get these illnesses diagnosed at an early stages, all because that they don't have health insurance. So I think that healthcare for all is a definite need in America.
Absolutely. And then actually another thing kind of on what you're saying, you can be used as a preventative thing to save money later on. And I actually heard a dentist talking about Medicare for all, and basically his job is to go out to low income areas and perform free services like once every 10 years is what he does. So what happens, well, he does it every year, but the people who show up like once every 10 years. So he's having these people show up who can't afford dental insurance, and then they finally show up after 10 years and not seeing a dentist, and they have so much damage in their mouth, like they need so much care. It's like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to get them back to the point where they don't hurt in their mouth all the time and they can brush every day and things like that. Where if we were just to give them a simple twice a year you can come in, have your teeth cleaned, have your checkup and things like that, it'd save taxpayers thousands of dollars when we have to end up paying that back in the long run. So yeah, preventative stuff is super important with Medicare for all. Oh man, I'm glad you brought that up. Not a lot of people actually do, so thank you.
Yeah.
I guess another thing to go on about Medicare for all real quick, I only have a few questions, so we can kind of elaborate and talk about them a little
Okay,
bit.
that's fine. That's fine. Sounds good to me.
For sure. So Medicare for all, it's actually not free medical. We will pay for it. And the way that we are going to pay for it is it will be 4% of your income after $29,000 a year. So for here in Arkansas, in specifically, the average income is about $40,000 a year. I think in Rogers up here in Northwest Arkansas, with your constituency, it's going to be somewhere closer to like 45 or 50,000 a year. So let's just say $45,000 a year is the average household income in Rogers. That's what we'll say. So subtract 29,000 from that. That's going to leave you with about Oh man, I haven't done the numbers for 45, but you subtract 29,000 and then 4% of that. So for the average Arkansan household income of 40,000, that's going to be 11,000, and 4% of 11,000 is about $440 per year will come out of your paycheck. But that $440 a year is going to give you and your entire family medical coverage. And if you make
$40 of medical coverage, like
for the whole year,
come on now. I mean, we're paying. There's people out there paying $280, $300 every other week for this.
It's crazy.
$440, I'll take that and know that I can take my sons to to actual doctors and not to ERs when they get sick. Take them to actual doctors. Take them to the regular checkups. I mean, healthcare would take the weight of a whole lot of pressure off of the average American's shoulders if they knew that they had reliable access to it. And you're talking about $440 a year. I mean,
and then still, and if you're making under 29,000, you qualify for Medicaid now, then you'll still get it at no cost. And if you're lower middle class and you're making about 100,000 a year, because that's what lower middle class is. Middle class is 125K a year. We're just a little bit behind here in Arkansas. But if you're making $100,000 a year, then it comes out to about $237 a month. So that's still a lot cheaper if you're making $100,000 a year than what you're probably paying now for your private insurance. So awesome. I'm glad you support Medicare for All. That's kind of like my litmus test. Like people are like, oh, will you interview me? And it's like, well, do you support Medicare for All? And they're like, no. I'm like, I'm sorry. That's it. But awesome. All right. So let's go to the next question here. So student debt. Student debt is a really big issue, not only here in Arkansas, but across the entire nation. And I keep hearing from people all over the country and my constituents here in Arkansas that are concerned because when they got their degree, they got out of college, they got a job, they've been paying their minimum payments on their student debt for the last 20 years, but they still owe the same amount because of the interest owed. So would you support eliminating student debt?
Yes, I definitely would support eliminating student debt. You got to think, man. Education is, to me, it's a pillar of America. Like everybody should be able to know that they can get a degree without being in debt for the rest of their life. Like, how can we expect to better ourselves and progress through our futures and try to be the best that we can be if it comes at a cost of debt for a lifetime? I mean, there's a lot of people who choose trades over going to college and getting degrees and trying to get bachelor's and master's because they know in order to get that they're going to be in debt for the rest of their lifetime. You have to make a certain amount of money in order to efficiently put your children through school or put yourself through school without going into debt. So I definitely think that there needs to be forgiveness, and I think that student debt needs to end, and I think that there needs to be a way to make education more affordable to low-income families and to people who don't have the ability to say, hey, I got $40,000 to send my kid to Harvard, or hey, I got $100,000 to send my kid to the best private school or college in America. There needs to be a way that low-income families can get their kids to these schools and get their kids these top-dollar degrees without having to go into debt for the rest of their life.
Definitely. And there is a way to pay for it, too. Just in case anyone doesn't know, because Bernie Sanders was the one who brought this up, and he talked about it all the time. And the way that we would pay for free college tuition for every single child in America is if we added a 1% tax on Wall Street speculation, which is currently an untaxed investment opportunity. So we can pay for it, and we just have to add a 1% tax to something that's currently not taxed, that usually, for the most part, the ultra wealthy, the richest 1/10 of 1%, are making all of their money in. So awesome. Just a question I don't have on here. How do you feel about, like, I know you've got some younger kids and you're probably paying for like preschool or have at some point. Do you think that the government should offer like free pre-K the same way that we offer free K through 12?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, it's really, really hard for parents with young children to work and to make a living. And with the way that things in the country is, I mean, you got to be careful about who you just leave your children with, because there's a whole lot of crazies out there. Mm-hmm. So I definitely think that we need to start investing, and we need to start thinking about education at a younger age and making it available and more ready for children to be able to learn in pre-K. So that way, when other kids are, so that way everybody's going into kindergarten at the same level. Nobody's feeling like, oh, well, they got this opportunity, but I didn't get this opportunity. I think that there needs to be more schools built just for pre-K. Just for the simple fact that we need to start getting our kids' minds turning early. We need to start getting them thinking about numbers and thinking about the ABCs and all this other stuff at an early age. And I think that pre-K is huge.
For sure, yes. Studies have shown that children who go through pre-K actually have an easier time all the way up through high school. So it's a great head start. Awesome. Well, I'm glad you support that. It's not a question I normally ask.
And I can give a real good example. My oldest son, his mother is in prison right now till he's 18. So when I got full custody of him, he had never been to pre-K, but I had raised his other brothers, and they all went through pre-K and all that stuff. When he went to school, you know, it took him a minute to catch on, so I hold him back to go to school with his brother because he was behind. You know what I'm saying? And his first year was kind of spent just learning how to be a student, learn how to walk in line, learning the basics and things like that, because he grew up in a rough environment. So I had to teach him. I had to say, son, you know, it's okay. You just ask questions. So I definitely think that kids who go into school with the pre-K have a way bigger advantage over children who do not have those opportunities and families who do not have the ability to get their kids into pre-K.
For sure, man. And, you know, some of the biggest pushbacks I get for a lot of the policies I support, everyone's like, well, how are we going to pay for it? And we don't want to raise taxes and things like that. So I do want to point out real quick for everyone watching, whenever it comes to like military spending, socialism for the rich and for corporations, they never ask, how are we going to pay for it? When it came to the $6.5 trillion Wall Street bailout from back in March, no one ever asked, how are we going to pay for this? They only ask how we're going to pay for it when it comes to the working class, to education and healthcare and things like that. So we will find ways to pay for it. It's not going to be free, but when it comes down to it, the majority of the billionaire class aren't paying taxes. Like you, your family, me, we're paying like 20, 25, 30% of our income in taxes. That's just the American way. And then you look at like the President Donald Trump, who paid $750 for a year with his net worth being several billion dollars. So if we could just enforce taxation on the billionaires avoiding taxation altogether, that's how we can pay for some of these programs.
Exactly.
Awesome. So let me move on. Let's see. Real quick, honey, when Caitlin was in preschool, do you remember how much we were paying? Was it $130 a week?
Something like that. It depends on where you put it, but that's the cheapest I think.
Yeah, so like the cheapest we could find, because I mean, it's expensive. You know, we're looking at between $130 to $160 a week for a 3-year-old kid to attend pre-K. That's a lot of money. And a lot of these, like especially single parents who have to make a decision, I need a babysitter. What do? I have to go to work to make money. You know, they're getting stuck putting their children in these pre-K and having to spend a ginormous portion of their paycheck for a lot of people. So super important thing. Sorry, I just figured I'd ask because she sat down.
Probably $700 at least.
About $700 a month?
Probably.
Yeah,
And
so
if
that's...
you have like 2-3 kids, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, what do you do if you have 2 or 3 kids? You're a single parent and you got to go to work. I mean, it's crazy. All right, so moving on. Let's see. So I kind of talked about taxes a little bit. So do you support lowering taxes for the middle class?
You said, do I support lowering taxes for the middle class?
Yeah, sorry.
I'm gonna be honest. I haven't really done like a whole lot of research into the different tax brackets to know how to effectively give you a well thought out research answer at that angle.
Yeah, no problem. Well, I guess we can just talk about it a little bit if you want it.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
So one of the things about being here in Arkansas is we pay some of the highest taxes in America. And we have one of the lowest incomes in America, which is crazy polar opposites. You'd think at least if we had high taxes, we'd have high income, or if we had low income, we'd have low taxes. But unfortunately, it's not that way. And a lot of these taxes are going to be handled at the county levels. So being part of and the city levels, being part of the city council, you're going to be looking at where taxes are spent. And it's really important that we start talking about, do we need to be spending more money on subsidies, or do we need to be spending more money on things like infrastructure and roads and schools and parks and things like that? But one thing that I really would like to see happen in our country is to, like I had kind of mentioned before, enforce taxation on the billionaires that aren't paying taxes at all, as well as enforcing taxation on corporations that aren't paying taxes at all, such as like Amazon, Netflix, FedEx, and things like that. And I think if we were to do something like that, then we could actually reduce the taxes for the working class and have the same tax revenue.
Yeah, I agree that I agree with that. I think that there should be more taxes on major corporations and major businesses, and I think that there should be less taxes on people who people who don't make as much money.
For sure. Yeah, I agree. And man, if we could just enforce taxation, I can't imagine how great of a society we could actually be. I mean, they talk about make America great again, and they judge how great we are by the economic growth of the richest 1/10 of 1% of the people in our country, where what we need to do is start comparing how great we are as a nation to how we take care of the working class and the most vulnerable among us. So here, let me give you just a few minutes. Is there anything specifically you would like to talk to your constituents about?
What I would like to, a lot of the things that I'm running on for my platform in Rogers, one of my biggest things is cooperative community enforcement. I would like to see a special response unit in Rogers made up of therapists, social workers, or counselors that are paired up with police officers or that handle calls that I don't fully feel that police officers are equipped to deal with. We're talking about wellness being checks. We're talking about suicide calls. We're talking about nonviolent domestic calls where voices are being just raised, but there's been no acts of violences. We need people who are trained in de-escalations and are not and that are not trained just to slap cuffs on somebody as soon as they can't figure out what the situation was. So we want people going over there. If you're going into a situation where a couple's arguing, voices is raised, most of the time, police officers end up taking somebody to jail in a situation like that. We need a counselor to go over there, talk them down, give them numbers, point them in the right direction. Well, you could go over here and talk to this person. They can help you. This person. People getting called for being homeless. Instead of taking the man to jail for homeless, let's point them in the directions of some homeless shelters, or let's point them in the direction of a program that can set him up and make sure that he's getting a hot meal for breakfast, lunch, and dinner without having to worry about going to jail and sitting in a cell, just to make sure that he's warm and just to make sure that he has food. Also, when there's been a lot of programs set up just like this, and it's reduced the recidivism rate by up to 60% in certain cities. So that means that the rate that people are going back to jail has been reduced by 60% because the counselors and the therapists and the social workers that are going out here to these calls, instead of the police officers, are de-escalating the situations and keeping the cuffs off of people and keeping them out of jail. So that's a program that I'd like to see implemented in Rogers, and we can take money for that we already have, basically sitting in CARES Act allocated money. We all know that all the governments got a whole bunch of money sitting back from CARES Act money. So they could take some of that money, they could take some of the money out of the existing health funds, and they could start this program with little to no problems. I'd also like to see the Rogers dollar stay in Rogers. There's been too many instances in this year, 2020, that Rogers has waived the bidding process and awarded multiple contracts to out-of-town businesses. Why are we not making sure that Rogers is thriving? Why don't we have some sort of educational program set up to teach the local business owners on how to be a part of these bidding processes, so that way they're not missing the bidding process, so that way these contracts aren't getting waived and awarded to out-of-town businesses. I want to see Rogers thrive, and I want to see Rogers City Council make sure that they're making sure that the local businesses in Rogers thrive. We also need to learn through recreation. The Parks Department, in the last 2 years, the Parks Department has spent about $2.5 million on renovating the parks in Rogers. Now I get it, and I'm not saying that the money wasn't well spent, because yes, we all want our kids to play at a nice park. We don't want it to be a dirty, rundown park. So I'm not saying the money wasn't well spent, but here's the point: we're in the middle of a pandemic. We are in the middle of a pandemic. Nobody's going to these parks every day and sliding down the slide. We need to be taking this money and we need to be putting it into our children, our youth, educational programs, outreach programs, programs for low-income families who are struggling in the middle of this pandemic. That $2.5 million could have been used in so many different ways to uplift the community of Rogers. So I would like to see, see new grants and new funds when they come in. I'd like to see Rogers focus on the true glory of Rogers. And to me, that's our youth. That's our children. That's making sure that they're successful. That's making sure that they grow up and that they have all the opportunities that they can possibly have, and making sure that the city officials and the city leaders make sure that all of these opportunities are available to the citizens of Rogers. Internet, too. We're talking about 15th century internet down here in Rogers. There needs to be internet infrastructure advancement in this area. We need to move Rogers into the 21st century, because right now Rogers is not in the 21st century. Did you know that there's an 18.5% of Rogers working ages adult do not have a high school diploma or a GED? That is above the national average rate. That is above the national dropout rate. We're talking about 18.5% of average working age adults in Rogers do not possess any form of a high school diploma or a GED. And then the thing about Rogers is we have an above average poverty rate. The poverty rate for the nation is I think it's a 11.8, and we're sitting at a 12.3. So why don't we increase our graduation rate, and why don't we reduce our poverty rate? These are things that we need to be focused on. Home ownership in Rogers too. Home ownership has been on a decline in Rogers. We need people to come to Rogers, and we need the people to say, hey, I love this community. I love the leaders in the community. I love the people in the community. I want to make this my community. I don't want to rent here. I want to buy a home here. We need to have classes set up for low-income families, so that way they can learn how to get their credit better, so that way they can apply for a small homeowner's loan. So that way, because in Arkansas, there's no renter's rights. Mm-hmm. We need to give these low-income families homes. We need to give them mortgages, so that way they're secure, and that way that they feel safe in the city that they call home.
So absolutely. That's kind of Yeah, man, spot on. I agree with everything you're saying. So many great points. I actually, when I worked for Cox as a contractor, I did a lot of work over in Rogers, and I saw a lot of the infrastructure there is outdated. They can't bring the good internet that that people want, like high-speed internet, to many of the different areas in Rogers as well, especially over around the Beaver Lake area. So yeah, it's all spot on. Why are we spending $2.5 million on parks when kids can't even go out safely to use them right now? Man, so many great points. I love it.
Yeah, it's just. I want to see this community come together in unity. When we're talking about local politics, let's forget Democrat, let's forget Republican, let's forget Joe Biden, let's forget Donald Trump, let's forget all of the outside noise, and let's focus on the plan and what's best for the community that we live in. Let's focus on who has the best course of action for the community that we live in. Yes, Rogers is a great community, but there's multiple things that we can do to make Rogers a better community. The person that I'm running against, Mark Kruger, he hasn't even put up a campaign sign, made a campaign ad. He's been sitting on city council since 1988. I was born in 1988.
Oh man, I was born in 87. That's a long time ago.
Can y'all not see this? You guys, he's been in here for 32 years, and he's only been challenged twice. So in 32 years, you're telling me that Rogers has only had the option to pick somebody else for city council twice. That is absurd to me. Another thing, Rogers has never had a black city council member. That speaks for itself. How come there is no diversity in the Rogers City Council? Like, isn't a city council full of, isn't it supposed to be diverse? Aren't we supposed to have people who speak and represent multiple different ethnicities and communities and middle class, lower class, the working class? Like, we're supposed to have all of these voices, all of these perspectives on a city council. No, what we have is a one-sided city council. We have a city council who is all of the same people, who do all of the same things, and know nothing about the poor or low-income communities. I can guarantee you not one of those city council members on Rogers City Council has ever had to go down and fill out a food stamp application. Has ever had to go down to the social office and fill out a Medicaid or Art Kids application for their children. Because guess what? They don't worry about these things because they don't come from where we come from. They live a different lifestyle. And that's why I'm running for office, is to bring a voice to the people who don't have a voice and bring representation to people who don't have representation.
I love it, man. I bet you they haven't had to sit in that building next to the community clinic either for WIC and wait to get their check for like 45 minutes in a long line. Man, we just need regular... I mean, I'm not saying the entire city council should just be regular working class people, but we at least have to have enough of a portion of it that we are knowing that our city council is fighting for the working class and not just fighting against the working class, to keep the same old going on that is leading to those high, what's the word I'm looking for? Those high rates in not having a high school degree or GED, these high rates of unemployment, these high rates of poverty and things like that. Nothing's changing. So we can't keep doing the same thing over and over and over and expect different results. It's time to try something new.
Exactly. And everybody grew up hearing that, if you keep doing the same thing and it don't work, then you got to change something up.
Definitely.
You can't keep doing the same thing over and over again. It don't work. Oh, I'm going to do the same thing again. It don't work. Oh, I'm going to do the same thing. It don't work.
Maybe it'll work next time.
It has to be changed. There has to be a legit course of action. And what my opponent lacks is a legit course of action. He had the nerve to say to me, or on the interview, he said, well, Rogers only has a 2% black population, so Black Lives Matter, it's important, but it's not as significant as what it would be in Little Rock or, you say, Fort Smith. Okay, so you're telling me that the 2% black population of Rogers is not as significant as the populations in Fort Smith and Little Rock? It doesn't matter if the population is littler. And then you also have to think about the Hispanic and the Latina community in Rogers. There's a 40%, it's 40% of the community. So if you feel like that about the 2% of the black community, what do you feel about the Hispanic and the Latina and the Marshallese community? On city council, they passed some, I need to research more into it and get the exact details of it, but they passed a COVID precautionary thing that basically went hand in hand and was working with liability issues for Tyson's and the poultry plants. That was disgusting to me. Like, that's disgusting, because do you know what the Marshallese and the Islanders and the Latinas are going through in these poultry plants? These are COVID hot zones, and these people are not being protected by any means. You go up to Springdale and there's a cemetery full of Marshallese who have died from coronavirus. This is serious. This is serious. And as an elected city official, these are the things that you need to be looking at, and these are the things that you need to be changing, and these are the people that you need to be protecting. You're not more important if you have more money, and you're not less important if you have less money. We're still all the same, and everybody has to be treated the same. You're not more important if you're white, and you're not less important if you're black, and you're not less important if you're Hispanic. We are all the same. We are all equal, and that doesn't show in the city council. We don't have that representation in the city council, and we need that representation, and we need those voices.
You can't hear right now, but I'm playing you an applause in the background, man. You're so spot on, dude. And no one's talking about the Marshallese community that's been impacted. For some reason, I feel like I heard like 40% of the entire Marshallese population in Northwest Arkansas has contracted COVID-19. And what have our representatives had to say about it? Not very much. They just blame them for being poor is pretty much what it came down to, and their culture. It's just insane. And Tyson is just been working these people.
Listen to them. Just think. All right, so they're over here. They're like, well, we're gonna go to America because we're gonna live a better life. You know, we're gonna actually make some money. We're gonna make a better life for our family, for our children. We heard this is the land of opportunity. And then when they get over here, we just literally take a crap on them. We just literally use them and abuse them for manual labor. It's disgusting. You know, just imagine if you can't get a job and the only place you can work is Tyson because you're not an actual citizen. And this is one of the only companies who will take you and give you a job. So imagine having symptoms of coronavirus and knowing you might be sick, but having to go to work, because if you don't go to work, you're gonna get a point because they won't excuse that absence for you being sick. So you have to be quarantined for 14 days to be safe and precautionary about coronavirus. So you're talking about 2 weeks that these Marshallese and these Islanders and Hispanics would have
You
to
lose
be
your
from
job.
work.
It's done.
They would be fired. They're gonna lose their job. Yo,
Yeah.
guys, stop. Yeah, they're gonna lose their
Man.
they're gonna lose their jobs. So like it's a lose-lose situation for them, and we have to put eyes on this. We have to put voices on this. We have to put leaders on this, and we have to protect them.
Spot on, man. I completely agree. And I'm really glad that, I'm talking with someone just like you who sees these issues and who's not too scared to talk about it, because Tyson is the number one donor of the majority of our politicians in this state, right next to Walmart. So, thank you for being brave enough to stand up, because these are huge issues that people aren't talking about. A lot of people don't even know that when people are working at Tyson, sometimes they have to wear diapers to work because they don't get enough breaks, bathroom breaks. And then when the COVID-19 happened, when it all began, they were like, oh, we're in a chicken shortage, we're running out of chicken. So they took federal money in to advertise, to hire more people, fill more positions, and they start producing more and more food. And you know what they did with it? They ended up exporting hundreds of thousands of pounds of chicken to countries like China. So they used COVID as an excuse to take in federal funds, work their workers extremely hard overtime. They sped up their production lines, all of these things. There's all sorts of lawsuits going on right now against Tyson for doing things like this. And this wasn't to help the American people during a worldwide pandemic. This was so that they could make a few extra bucks exporting food to another country. It's just crazy.
The thing about it is imagine being so humiliated that you have to wear a diaper to work. That is
just crazy.
That is basically telling them you're not a human being. You're just here to work.
This is America in 2020. This shouldn't even be in a movie or a book. It's surreal. It's crazy.
It's disgusting, and it's something that it's something that I won't stand for. When I think about city council and I think about leaders in the community, I think about how proactive they are. Like, why should you have to go search up and try to find who represents your city? Shouldn't that be common knowledge?
If they're doing a good job, you should know their name already, because they should be involved with your community.
Exactly. Like, shouldn't a city council member be out there at the rallies, whether they agree with the views or not? Shouldn't they be out there hearing their community and listening no matter what? They should always be there. Their community should always be able to lean on them. They should be always out there with the homeless. They should always be out there with the youth. They should always be showing their face in a way that makes it known to the community that they're for the community. City council to me is more than just going to a meeting every 2 weeks and dealing with budgets and dealing with funds and things like that, and annexing and building, and it's more than that to me. It's being it's you representing your community. People voted you in that position. They believed in you. When somebody believes in you enough to get up, drive their car to the polls, get out, go look up your name and mark it on the polls, you got to do something with that belief. You can't just do the bare minimum. You can't just walk the line. You have to go above and beyond. You have to earn that respect. They gave you a chance. They said, here's a chance to show me. So what you do when you get that chance is you go above and beyond. You give your 200%. You leave in their mind no room to doubt that you are for this community, that you are for unity, that you are for the people of this community, and you are for the betterment of Rogers. And I don't see that on the city council, especially not in my opponent.
Man, I'm starting to believe in you just in the last 35 minutes. And we're not even done yet. I haven't even asked you one of the most important questions that I ask is, so number one, do you believe in climate change? Do you think that the climate is changing around our planet?
I think that, yes, I do think the climate is changing around our planet for the simple fact, like, you can tell, like, there's tornadoes. Everything's been off. Hurricane season been off. Tornado season been off. Summer's been off. Rain's been off. Like, everything's been kind of a little bit backward, and it's been weird these last little 5-10 years, you know. And it gradually gets worse. So, like, I do believe in climate change. I am gonna be honest. I'm not well versed, and I'm not well researched on climate change. That's something that I've started just recently, kind of looking into. But I definitely do believe in it. I'm just not fully versed in to speak on it in a way where I would really know exactly all of the facts and what I'm talking about.
No worries. Pretty much everyone that I've been interviewing, they're all federal candidates. So it's kind of on a different level where they have more control over how we address climate change. But just the fact that you believe in science is huge, because there are just too many people right now that don't even believe in science. They won't listen to scientists. Yeah, and then kind of the question is, like, do you support the Green New Deal and why? So what the Green New Deal is going to be, it's basically a statement. The Green New Deal is saying that climate change is an existential threat, the biggest threat we faced as a species, and we're willing to do what it takes to combat this threat so that we can keep our planet habitable for our children and our grandchildren and future generations to come. So do you think that the climate changing, well, I know you said you're not really that versed in it right now, but I guess the way I feel about this would be, if we can afford to inject $6.5 trillion into Wall Street, we can afford to inject $2 trillion into making sure that our planet doesn't warm the 3 degrees Celsius that we're worried about right now, so that we don't have to worry about these crazy tornadoes and hurricanes and flooding.
I think there's no amount of money that's not worth taking care of our home.
Awesome. I love it. And then to quote Greta Thunberg, she recently said, as long as the value of a dead tree is worth more than a living tree, we're in trouble, basically, which I think is spot on and really important.
Yep, I agree.
Awesome. So, that's pretty much all I have for questions. I usually ask, what can we do about the oligarch that has purchased our government? And what that's referring to is the fact that a lot of our state representatives, which is a different position than what you're running for, but a lot of our state representatives have been taking money from corporations like Walmart, Tyson, and from billionaires like the Koch brothers, Soros, Bloomberg, and other billionaires. And these special interests have given so much money to our representatives that our representatives no longer represent us. They don't work for us anymore. They work for these special interests, which has converted our representative republic, or our democracy, into what is called an oligarch. And an oligarch is basically a government controlled by a small few. And do you think that we should end things like congressional lobbying?
You're saying like politicians who are getting money cut for their pockets from Walmart and Tyson's, and so basically whatever benefits that company in itself is where that politician is going to vote. Yeah, that's got to go. We need politicians that's for the people and strictly the people, not for any of these corporations, not for a bigger buck, not for a bigger dollar. We just need politicians who are there for the people and strictly the people, and ain't gonna let a little bit of money make them switch up on the people.
For sure. Awesome, man. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about? I know you covered most of the different things in your 10-minute speech, and I loved the entire thing. I can't wait actually to play it back and listen to it again. But did you have anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I didn't, man. I just appreciate the opportunity for you to come on here or for you to bring me on here and actually get a chance to talk to the community about my platform.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Aaron. These last 40 minutes that we've spent talking, I've asked you about a bunch of different progressive policies, and I was really impressed with how you talked about your responses to these questions, and even the questions that you don't necessarily know the answer to because you haven't researched it. You stated you're more than willing to put the research into it and to figure it out, and you had no problem listening to my explanations and keeping it. Just thank you so much, man. You are a true progressive, and I really appreciate that. We need a lot more progressives here in Arkansas, and I'm glad that you have, have taken the, what's the word I'm looking for? It's so hard to run for office because a lot of people don't realize the stress that's involved in it on the candidate themselves and their families and all those other things. So, thank you for taking a stand and doing that. And because of your progressive policies and everything you support, I am going to endorse you as a progressive candidate. I'm hopeful for you. I can't wait to see where you go. I know your career in politics is hopefully just getting started, and I hope you get elected and you decide to stay on city council at least for the next 10 years. I don't know how you feel about term limits, but at least long enough to start to get the change that we really need here in Arkansas. So thank you so much for that.
All right, thank you so much. I really appreciate you for having me, and thank you so much for the endorsement. It means a lot to me.
Oh, it's my pleasure and my honor, Aaron. So, everybody watching, thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your evening to meet Aaron, to get to know him a little bit, and continuing to support our progressive movement, because we are at a point where if we do want to take our government back from the oligarch, it's going to take us coming together and saying enough is enough, that our government is supposed to be by the people, for the people, not by special interests for the special interests. So thank you guys so much for your time. I appreciate it. I have another interview coming up. Let's see here. I've got a few interviews coming up. Tomorrow, I will be doing an interview with Lisa Savage. She is the Green Party candidate out of Maine running against Susan Collins. And even though she's a Green Party, you don't have to worry about, hurting the Democratic votes or anything like that, because in Maine, they have ranked choice voting. So I'm excited to interview her. She's a progressive. Antoine Pierce is going to be tomorrow evening. He is the progressive Democrat running out of Louisiana against, I think it's Bill Haggerty. And then I've got an interview with Chris Miles tomorrow for his podcast with ARC 420. On Wednesday, the 21st, I'll be down in Fort Smith at the University of Arkansas for the Breonna Taylor Vigil, where I'll be speaking. And hey, if you have some time, Aaron, maybe you would like to come speak as well, or at least come and show some support. And yeah, so we've got a busy week ahead of us, y'all. I really appreciate your time.
All right, thank you, man.
Oh, no problem. So you guys have a good night. I will catch y'all tomorrow. My name is Dan Whitfield. I'm a progressive independent here in Arkansas. I'm going to be the 2022 candidate running against John Bozeman. This is Aaron Clarke. He's the progressive candidate running for Rogers City Council. We wish you guys have a good night. May God bless y'all. May God bless America. And may God bless Arkansas.
Thank you, guys.